Oh, let's see here. Now. It's 1208. Ta-da, there we are. Hey, good morning, everybody. It is 10 o'clock, and today's Wednesday, April 14th, 2021, and you guys are Biology 1161, Section 90, my Wednesday morning Human Anatomy Lab. And let's see, last time we finished the last handout, which was the circulatory and respiratory system. And so today we're going to start this handout, which is the digestive and urogenital systems kind of together. But today I think we're just doing the digestive part today. And then next week, the urogenital part. And so basically the first half of this year, about half and half. And I think the digestive is a little bit shorter, but might be a lot shorter because you can see I drew lines through a lot of stuff. So again, what I chose to do is look at the pictures that I have on my courses. Speaking of which, let me find that real quick and get this thing out the way. Get out of here. So I'm going to go to your My Courses page, which is right about, let's see. When I say you guys are section 90, this looks like your thing here. And so remember all your table of contents right here. Material for Practical 3, that's where you find your handout. Let me click on that. So that's this one right here. And if you don't have that printed out or opened up, you can get it right here. And then here's your images. And this is basically all the images we're going to use for your final practical, which, by the way, is week after next, 2 weeks from today. And we did all this eye and ear and brain stuff, and then circulatory, and then remember respiratory last week. And then this is digestive here, some kind of digestive stuff. And so I will do a split screen like this, like I did before. This over here, kind of move that like that. And let's see here, get this up out the way. Bring this down, make everything look nice and tight, and there we go. So let's begin. Look, the digestive stuff, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then some endocrine, and we'll save all this urogenital stuff for next week. But I kind of just have broken down by sections, beginning with structures of the oral cavity. And, you know, unfortunately, the images I found didn't point out everything I wanted to see on our mannequins, but most of it. And so, so we missed out on all this stuff. And if you want to see what that looks like, I mean, you just open up your textbook. But the only thing I'm going to ask you about on your test this stuff is labeled. And of course, if it's not crossed out, it's probably labeled somewhere. So first here, I have the hard palate, soft palate. That's the roof of your mouth. Obviously, to see that, you have to look at a sagittal section of the head like this. Of course, here's the oral cavity, right? See the tongue? There's the roof of the mouth. And you can tell the hard palate versus the soft palate. What makes it hard is bone. And so you get your bony part right here in the front. That's the hard palate. And then the reddish, that's muscle. That's the musculature associated with the soft palate. Your soft palate moves. It actually moves when you swallow. Every time you swallow, this raises up and closes over your nasal cavity simultaneously as the epiglottis closes over the glottis. Okay, I talked about that this morning. Okay? And we'll talk more about it in lecture when we talk about the digestive system. We're on the respiratory system right now in lecture. So those two things. And then we'll talk about the uvula or fauces in there. But then we point out some of the salivary glands, the parotid gland, the submandibular gland, and then that's all you can see. And then Stenson's duct or the parotid duct. Now to see those glands, you look at the outside of the head, like right here. All right, look carefully. You can see here's the ear, obviously. And the big gland right here next to the ear, that's the parotid gland, because otid means ear, so it means surrounding the ear or near the ear. So that's how you can remember that. And it has a pretty significant duct that comes across and it opens up right about the level of your second premolar up at the top, right there. There's an opening right there, and that's where saliva comes in. These are one of your 3 sets of external salivary glands, or extrinsic salivary glands, I should say. So this is the big one, the parotid. And then the submandibular, which means under the mandible. Here's, of course, your jawbone, mandible. And up underneath that, there's another one right there. And then there's one under the tongue, but they don't point it out, so we're skipping that. Okay, so there's your salivary glands, most of them anyway. The next, I move on to the stomach with associated structures. Now, you know, most about anybody could pick out the stomach, there's a stomach. But look at it more detail. I think there's another stomach. Here's the stomach removed. And here's the stomach model in place, but cut, I guess that would be a longitudinal section, cut lengthwise, so to speak, and looking at it inside. And so I'll list some things associated with the stomach. Now, the first thing I have listed is the esophagus. Why do you put the esophagus with the stomach? Well, because I want you to know one end of the stomach versus the next, because this is where the esophagus attaches right here. They don't label it there, but they must label it somewhere. Let me see. Well, here's your stomach model. And of course, you can see where the esophagus is coming down and attaching right here. Okay. And then the gastroesophageal cardiac orifice, or here they call it the junction, same thing. Like basically where the stomach and esophagus come together right here. Or here. And here they label it the cardiac orifice. I don't know, when you think cardiac, or when you hear cardiac, what do you think about? You think of the heart, right? And this is old. A lot of old books will call this the cardiac region, the cardiac orifice, the cardiac valve. I don't like it, and most other authors don't like it. They refer to it more at the gastroesophageal. So don't call it cardiac. That sounds, it's, to me, misleading. Maybe they call it that because it's closer to the heart, right underneath the heart, maybe, because your heart, maybe there's your diaphragm and your heart's on the other side of it. So I guess that's why they call it that. But it's a bad choice of words in my opinion. But gastroesophageal is pretty safe, because stomach, esophagus, that makes sense. Okay. The fundus, see this word fundus? Now the fundus isn't a term confined to the stomach. It's a general term that refers to like a domed or a bulge kind of shaped structure, a fundus. And the stomach has a fundus. This is got a bulge right there. See the label fundus there. At this end of the stomach, very, very distinct. They don't label it here, but it's easier to see, in my opinion, like right here. And it's kind of covered up by the liver right there, but that's where it is. I like to call it your burp chamber, because food doesn't occur in the fundus right here. Right here. Most of the food occurs right here in the center, which is called the body of the stomach. It's processed here and then it's liquefied and moved to this next portion of the stomach here, which is called the pylorus. But up here, gas accumulates, and it's like your little burp chamber. And intermittently, gas is released from the fundus up the gastroesophageal orifice when you belch. So there you go, burp. So there's that. Like again, the body, they don't label it, but that's the center part here, scratch. The pylorus, that's this little tail of the stomach. Right here is cut open, right there. Keep going the wrong way. Or here, you can see really good here. This is the pylorus from here to here on the stomach. And like I said, the food is processed in the body and it's mixed with gastric juices and it's turned into like a liquefied version of what you masticated, which we call the bolus. Bolus is what you swallow. Chyme is what's produced, and chyme is like a thick cream, and that's what it accumulates here in the pylorus, and it's intermittently released through a sphincter to enter the small intestine, okay, which is called the pyloric sphincter. That makes sense, right? And that's what I have next, pyloric sphincter. You can kind of see this kind of indentation right here, and if you section it open, I think you can kind of see it right there. You know, see it's kind of pinched closed at the pyloric sphincter. It would open up, you know, it's like looks like a little anus. You know, it opens, and then the chyme, C-H-Y-M-E, would be released from the pylorus or the pyloric region of the stomach, either way, and it enters the small intestine. And then I have the duodenum. It's not duodenum. Some people pronounce it like that, but it's duodenum or duodenum. I say duodenum. But that's the initial segment of the small intestine that would attach here, just on the other side of the pyloric sphincter. You have the duodenum. And there it is right here, duodenum. That's where that end of the stomach would connect. So right here is duodenum. And you can see right from here down is duodenum. All right. And if you look, you can see the entire duodenum. It's shaped like a C. It's like the C-shaped initial segment of the small intestine. And we'll look at it again when we look at parts of the small intestine. But I list it with the stomach because, again, I want you to know, one end of the stomach versus the next. This is the duodenum here and the esophagus here. All right. To me, that's important. And then the greater curvature and lesser curvature. Notice how the stomach has a concave surface and an outer convex surface. The outer convex surface is the greater curvature, and the inner concave surface is the lesser curvature. Okay. And then gastric rugae, I'm surprised they didn't label these. See all the little folds on the inside of the stomach? Those are the rugae, but they don't label it, so I won't ask you that. But I talk about that in lecture too, and I'll show you in lecture. But there you go. So lab, you don't have to worry about that. Now next, the small intestine and large intestine or colon. The large intestine and the colon is the same thing, or sometimes people might call it the bowel, your bowel, my bowels, whatever. That's your colon, that's your large intestine. And what's the difference between the small intestine and large intestine? Well, let's go like here. All the gray is large intestine, and all this kind of fleshy colored stuff is small intestine. And they call them large versus small, not based on diameter or not based on length, but by diameter. You notice that this is much smaller than this. See how broad this is? But it's much shorter. The large intestine is larger diameter, but much shorter. It's only about 6 to 8 feet long. With the small intestine, we divide it into 3 portions. I think 4 portions. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 4 portions. But if you took it out and stretched it out on most cadavers, it would extend for about 22 feet. And like I said, you know, the large intestine probably less than 10. You know, but anyway, the portions of it. The first part of the small intestine I have listed again is the duodenum. Remember I said the duodenum is the initial segment. You can see it here. You can't see it here because it's all covered up by the liver. But look, let's scroll back up here. I want to show you this. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Hang on. Right here. This is a beautiful model. When we looked at it for looking at the hepatic portal system, remember all that? And you see this, all right? See, it looks like a C, and this is posterior view. This is anterior view. This is the duodenum. Did they label it anywhere? Can I use this on a test? Duodenal papilla. That's not good. Here, yeah, see, I can use this image on a test, and I want you to know this. So if I point this out, say, hey, what is this? You should know what this is. This is the duodenum. Like I said, it's C-shaped, and it's like this on all mammals. It's shaped like this, and it's shaped like a C. That's to accommodate the head of the pancreas. You see, this is all pancreas in here. The pancreas is always nestled in here. That's the head of the pancreas, and it kind of tapers off as the body, and that's the tail of the pancreas. Okay, so that's a good view of the duodenum. The stomach would attach here, and then the rest of the small intestine attaches right here. The word duodenum literally means 12 fingers. How many fingers you got? 10 fingers, right? 10 plus 2 more. If you measured that, it'd be about 10 inches. Duodenum means 12 fingers, but it's about 10 inches long. Now, I guess early anatomists were measuring things with their fingers, like kind of like you would measure horses. You say like a horse is like 15 hands high or 17 hands high if it's a real big horse. And most like what they call Morgan ponies, Morgan horses, you know, are about 13 hands high or so. Thoroughbreds are about 15, you know, so many hands high. So anatomists, I guess, where you measure things in fingers anyway. But it's not based on length. Okay, it's C-shaped, you know, from right here where you would have the pyloric sphincter comes around, and see where it kind of makes this little bend. That bend actually has a name, but they don't label it. It's called the duodenal jejunal flexure right there. That's a cool word. I love that, duodenal jejunal flexure. I should ask it anyway, but I'm not because it's not labeled. But that's that little bend. I talk about this in the lecture though. And from the duodenal jejunal flexure, that's where you, from here out, is the next segment of the small intestine, which is called the jejunum. Now, the word jejunum means empty. And for some reason, anatomists, when they were looking at this part of the small intestine, it never had anything in it. So they just call it the empty part, which is just, you know, coincidental. But the jejunum is kind of framed in here, the top part of, if you imagine the, click on this, the large intestine kind of framing in the small intestine, the top part of it here, it's mostly jejunum. It's just a small intestines right here. But it's would be after the duodenum, the next 8 feet. If you measured it, it'd be about 8 feet long after that. And then, of course, it's all up in here. Now, you can't really look at it and say, does this look like jejunum and this looks like ileum? Well, no. In the gross anatomical view, you can't tell them apart. But under the microscope, you could. But if you wanted to get an idea, well, up in this area, roughly up in here, this first half is jejunum. And then the next segment, the ileum, see ileum, that's the last 12 feet. And what's important about the ileum, this is the last portion of the small intestine that actually connects to the large intestine. And so, although, you know, this is ileum obviously right here, And so when does it stop becoming ileum and becoming jejunum? He says, like right here, how can you tell if it's not right here or here? You can't, not with your naked eye. But certainly the last few feet right here, because man, it's like 12 feet long. And like right, like from around from about here down. The word ileum, now you have two ilia. You have ileum, like his, which is your small intestine. You have ilium, which is your hip bone. Two different spellings, two different parts of your body. But I think both words mean the same thing. They mean like twisted, contorted. I'm not sure why the hips are twisted and contorted, but this definitely is twisted and contorted because it's the longest portion of your small intestine, but it occupies the least amount of space because it's kind of like bunched up right down there in your pelvic cavity. So you get all 12 feet just crunched up back there. You can see this is the front part of it, but more of it's in the back. All this space right here, you got more surface area up here than jejunum. The ileum is the tight part down here. But anyway, I mean, it'd be safe to say anywhere from back, I don't know, 2 or 3 feet or so would be definitely ileum. But once you get up in here, of course, that's jejunum. Anyway. Next is the ileocecal valve. Ileocecal means like between the ileum and the cecum. The cecum is this pouch right here, and it's where the ileum comes together and joins. And so there's a little valve there, kind of like a pyloric sphincter valve, and it's where the food, as it's being piped down through the small intestine, as it's traveling, remember that's where it's coming in contact with the blood supply, and things are being absorbed into the blood. And remember, that's going to be taken by those mesenteric veins to the liver. Remember we talked about the hepatic portal? Well, here you go. This is being absorbed. All the nutrients are being absorbed, but it's crude. Remember, this is your oil field. Crude nutrients being absorbed. And then so by the time it enters the large intestine, all nutrient absorption is finished. And so basically what you're going to do in the large intestine is just bypass the garbage, what's left over. The word feces, F-E-C-E-S, feces, comes from the word of falx, F-A-E-X, which means dregs. The dregs, like what's left over, like the bottom dregs, like the bottom of the barrel kind of stuff. Like if you ever mix together some tea or made some tea or coffee or whatever, and you got like some residue at the bottom of the pot or the bottom of a pitcher, there's stuff at the bottom there, a debris, you call that. Is that what you call that? Or someone got a Cajun word for it. But that's what dregs are. So the dregs of digestion, the stuff that's left over that couldn't be used, are being processed in the large intestine. And most of the processing is basically recovering all the water that's in it, and so they're dehydrating it. That's what, when things go wrong and that's not working right, that's how diarrhea happens. You're not recovering that water, it's staying in the colon and it's just coming out your body. And that's, of course, you're losing body water. That's why severe diarrhea is pretty dangerous. You risk dehydration because your large intestine is supposed to recover that water. But if it's not, you're going to dehydrate yourself. Anyway, that's the small intestine, the beginning of the large intestine. Next, I have the falciform or the vermiform appendix, or just popularly just called appendix, but vermiform just means worm-like, and so that's your appendix. Like if you have an appendectomy, this is what they're cutting off due to an appendicitis, inflammation of the appendix. So you can see it right there. Can you see it anywhere else? Let's see. Can't see it there. Can't see it there. I guess that's the only place you can see it. Yeah, so if I'm going to ask you the vermiform appendix, I have to ask you on this illustration here. And then the cecum This is the New World spelling, C-E-C-U-M. The Old World spelling is C-A-E-C-U-M, which means either way, it means blind, like a little blind pouch. Because if everybody knows that the small intestine connects to the large intestine, right? And then things go. But they don't connect end to end, like you're connecting two different like garden hoses end to end. No, the small intestine, it kind of taps into the side of the large intestine, and then the food goes up that way. So you got just a dead space down here. So the actual this dead space is the cecum. That's where the vermiform appendix actually opens up into the cecum. You look carefully, you might see a little dark spot. That's the opening of the appendix. The appendix technically is a portion of the large intestine. It's the smallest portion of the large intestine, but it's part of the large intestine. But it's a vestigial portion of the large intestine. This is doesn't have a significant function in humans, but most mammals, not all, but most mammals have this portion of their large intestine either in use or not. It might be completely gone, like pigs don't have an appendix, but rabbits do, but it's not an appendix. It's actually a functional portion of their large intestine. In animals that have a more herbivorous diet, they eat more plant material. Their small intestine and large intestine are more extensive and more complicated, I guess you could say. This becomes more useful in processing plant material, but there's kind of a general rule of thumb that the more herbivorous an animal is, the more involved the intestines are. The less herbivorous or the more carnivorous, the simpler the guts are. So in other words, if humans are omnivorous. They don't eat just meat. They don't eat just plants. They eat both. Okay, so the complexity of our gut is kind of mediocre. It's less complicated than a plant eater, but more complicated than something that eats just meat. Because if you look at something that's a strictly meat eater, there's not a lot to the gut, because meat, animal proteins, doesn't take much to break it down. It digests very easily. And so if it digests very easily, you don't need a really long, complicated gut. So your intestines are much shorter, simple. But if you got to process plant material, if you just eat grass all day, there's not a lot of nutrients in grass. And that's why cows have to eat so much. They just eat grass, They eat it all day long and they chew it all day long. Their stomach is multi-chambered, their esophagus and so forth, and their guts, and like rabbits, the same thing. That's why this part in other herbivorous animals is much longer, a more significant part of the intestine to process plant material. Since we can kind of get away with losing some of that because we eat meat and plant material, so we got a mediocre gut. That's kind of a long version for a short explanation, but anyway, there you have it. Cecum and the appendix, and then where am I? Oh, then parts of the colon or large intestine, or from the cecum up, ascending up is the ascending colon that goes up like this until you make this part that comes across. Let me click on this. The transverse colon, see that? Transverse coming across. And then the descending colon on the right side of the body coming down, 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 down. And then this is anterior. And then right about here, it starts the sigmoid colon. The word sigmoid, I think about the Greek letter sigma. Let me show you something. Had to get my handy dandy Sharpie. This is our letter S in our English alphabet. The Greek alphabet, they don't have an S, they have a sigma. And so things that are S-shaped or kind of zigzag like that, that kind of pattern are described as being sigmoid. So something sigmoid has, can you see that? It's a shaped like a sigma or sigmoid. And so the sigmoid colon extends from, you know, the descending colon, and it kind of zigzags back posteriorly through the pelvic cavity, and then it kind of makes a bank shot off the sacrum and then straightens out. So you can't see it kind of zigzagging, but it's headed back that way. Wait, let me show you. Scroll down, scroll down. Right, but this is the end of the sigmoid colon. See, remember, here in the front is zigzagging back to here. Here's the sacrum, and it kind of like makes a bank shot and then straightens out right there. That's a good shot right there. Why is this? Oh, that's just a pelvic model. Okay. That's the only place that they label it. And this is urogenital stuff. Here, yeah, of course, here's cut open. But anyway, that's the sigmoid colon. And then these two structures here, the Taenia coli and Hostra. Let me scroll up for these. These are features of the large intestine. Let me see where they point that out. Okay, Taenia coli. See this band right here on the large intestine? That's the only place you really have smooth muscle right there. And that's the smooth muscle associated with the large intestine. And the Hostra are these like little pleats. Where do they point out Hostra? There we go, Hostra. Will be pleats or the Hostra. Okay. And then look, the greater omentum. You have mesentery everywhere, right? And this white tissue is mesentery, and some mesenteries have different names. And let's see. Attached to the greater curvature of the stomach is the greater omentum, and it's been removed here, but it would drape over all the intestines right here, and so it must be labeled somewhere. Where? Okay, greater omentum. Let's find it. I didn't cross it out, so it must be labeled. Oh, you know, it's probably on the stomach model. It can't be up that far. I forget where it is. There it is. No, that's greater curvature. But that's it. Oh, wait. Let me click on this. No, you can see this right here. That's part of it. Maybe it's not labeled. I don't see it labeled anywhere. Do I need to scratch it out? Greater omentum. Don't you guys love it when your teacher scratches stuff out and you're going to say, oh, delete that, scratch it out. You might be able to get to do that today. Let's see. Maybe I saw greater curvature and I was thinking greater omentum, but that's where it is. It's that yellow stuff. That's what it is. And I don't see it labeled. I don't see it here. But it'd be covering all this. It's like a big fatty apron that extends over all this. So it's not there. I mean, they're the only two places it could be. I don't see it there. Okay, well, let's do a little editing today. I didn't realize that. I'm gonna let you guys like this. Scratch, stave, there. So you don't have to worry about that. I won't ask you that. But if you, oh, it's right there. Why didn't somebody tell me? There it is, man. I started looking up. I didn't even consider this thing. So we got to unscratch it. I can't ask you. Remember I said it's attached right here and it forms like this apron. There it is, right there. Yeah, I just found the lesson. I should have trusted myself. I knew what I was doing. Undelete it. Okay, now let me save it. God, what did I just do? I didn't undo that. I accidentally inserted something. Now, save. There it is. So if I'm going to ask you, I have to show you this model. And our models in the lab look just like this. And here's your liver and there's your stomach. It attaches to all that yellow to the greater curvature of the stomach. It's part of your mesentery. And here, this side has been cut away, but it forms this big, like fatty apron that covers all this up. And to view your stomach, you'd have to grab that and you lift it up to see it. But on these models, it just kind of shows it plastered on there like that. So anyway, there that is. Okay, I'll have to remember that. Greater omentum. Okay, mesentery proper, they don't label that. If you wanted to see it, I don't know if you can see it anywhere. Wait. It's what's no, it's what's between the intestines. If you take the intestines and kind of open them up, it's not in there just all loose. Your intestines, they're bound by mesentery proper, and so between you get this connective tissue, and that's to support the blood vessels going to it, but you can't see that. So this little white right here would be parts of it, but anyway, they don't label that. And then where am I? Yeah. Then the rectum, your sigmoid colon coming, and like I said, remember, it makes that bank shot, and then it straightens out. The one remember rectum from rectus, which means straight, the straight part of the large intestine here. Of course, you know, it all comes to an end at the anus right here. But let's see. Let me show you more rectum though. There's rectum there. And then here goes sigmoid colon, then the rectum, and more rectum there. They don't label it, but and here's the rectum cut open. Just want to see if they label it anywhere else. No, that's it. Then rectal valves. I talk about these in lecture, but they don't point them out in here. I think the only model. I thought it was in the female. But both sexes have it, but you can't. They don't point it out. They don't show it. Then the anal sphincters. These are the valves. That's the muscle that encloses the. Let me see. So I think way up here. Yes. Well, let's see. Where am I? Anal sphincter, anal canal. Okay, all this anal stuff. This, the muscle on the outside. This is a good model, but they don't point out. This is the external anal sphincters and the internal anal sphincters. I must label it somewhere, so let me find it. Right. Here's the external, internal. I must label it somewhere. I don't see it. Anal sphincters. Internal anal sphincter, external anal sphincter. Here's the external sphincter. And the internal, see, external, the internal is like right here and here. Oh, you know what? Yeah, they just call it anal sphincter. I think that's why I did that, but I put in parentheses what it really is. So yeah, anal sphincter. That's technically the external anal sphincter. And then they don't label it, but yeah, that's good. Just the anal sphincter, but that's what it is. And then the anal canal is that portion of the rectum surrounded by the sphincter. So that's why they go anal canal. Now, I would move my arrows down a little bit because the anus technically is the opening to the outside. So the anal canal technically is like right here. This leader needs to be like right here, and this leader needs to be out here. But do you not know where the anus is? But technically, that's what makes the anal canal different from the anus. The anal canal is just that portion that's surrounded by the sphincters. Okay, that's it. Okay, so much for that. Now the liver. We're going to look at the liver model. You can see liver right here. There's lobes of the liver, and I could probably want to look at the liver model for that. Let's see. Let me find it. Probably right. Yeah, this is it. We're going to the inferior view of the liver. Look at it from underneath. This is the back, and this is the front, posterior, anterior. Here's the left lobe right here, up until the round ligament, and then the right lobe's everything else over here. Now, the right lobe has two sublobes, the caudate lobe and quadrate lobe. The caudate lobe is the little one in the back, right here, between the inferior vena cava and the falciform ligament. And the one in the front is the quadrate lobe, this one right here between the gallbladder and the round ligament, or this technically is the round ligament in the falciform ligament right here. Anyway, quadrate lobe in the front, caudate in the back. The porta hepatis where do they label that? Porta hepatis. You must show it somewhere. I don't remember seeing that. Porta hepatis. Not down here. That's all pelvic stuff. But this little ring right here, it must be somewhere. That's the porta hepatis. Well, maybe we do get to delete something today. Because I don't remember. Now I'm thinking about it, I don't remember pointing that out. I don't see it pointed out. But see this line right here? Around. The porta hepatis isn't really a thing. It's just a region. The region that's enclosed by this line defines the porta hepatis. The porta means the gateway to the liver. I won't ask you that. So let me because it's not pointed out. Is it? Did anybody find it? I don't see it anywhere. So okay, we do get to cross something out today. And I'm not promising you I won't uncross it like I did the other one. But for right now, we're going to cross it out. Okay. All right. So there's that. The ligaments. Okay. There's a falciform ligament and a round ligament. Now they call this one round ligament, which is the falciform ligament is what separates the left lobe from the right lobe, and it goes through and through the liver all the way from here to here. But the round ligament is a vestige of your umbilical vein. When you're born, you lose your umbilical cord, right? And in your umbilical cord, you have two umbilical arteries and an umbilical vein. And your umbilical vein, it carries blood from your mother to your liver, because it's taking her crude stuff, piping it to your liver so your liver can extract nutrients and you can use it as a developing fetus. But then once you're born, you know, that shuts down. But a little remnant of it's a thickening of the falciform ligament right here. And it's kind of like a landmark between these two lobes right there. Let me see. That might be it. This white line, that's the falciform ligament. And right underneath there, which would be like right here, that's where the round ligament would be. Okay. That's that. Then, of course, the gallbladder. A little bitty piece of it poking out right there. Of course, there it is again, big green one. And, of course, all this green gallbladder. And I think that's it. And then the ducts associated with the gallbladder. All right, most of them you will see here. To me, the easiest one is to find the cystic duct. The cystic duct is basically an extension of the gallbladder. Okay, it's what drains the gallbladder, but the gallbladder, the cystic duct, is joined from ducts from the liver. There's a left and right hepatic ducts, which merge to form a common hepatic duct. And that's what's right here, where these two come together is a common hepatic. And where the cystic duct and common hepatic duct come together, it forms a common bile duct. Okay. And let me see. The common bile duct is what descends down and connects to the duodenum. You can see the green thing right here that's carrying bile from the cystic duct and the common hepatic duct to the duodenum. You can see it right there. And a little bit of it right there. Of course, this is where it would start right here. From here and go to the duodenum. A little bit of piece of green right there. There it is right there again. It's going to be gallbladder, cystic duct, common hepatic to this is, coming from the liver. And then where this one and this one come together, it forms this one. So there's three. 1, 2, and then 3. Cystic, common hepatic, and then common bile right there. Okay, that's it. Then endocrine structures, the endocrine system, there's not a whole lot. I just point out some glands. Some of these glands you saw already. Remember, like the pineal gland, pituitary gland, that's, in with the brain. You go back and look at that, I guess, wherever it's pointed out. There's the pituitary gland right there, and the pineal gland's right there, but it's not pointed out there. It's going to be pointed out somewhere. It's probably up in the brain models. You go way back up here. Pituitary, pineal, there you go. If I was going to ask you to probably use this model here. Believe it or not, they don't show you, they show you a thyroid gland, I'm sure, somewhere, but they just don't point it out. So I won't ask you. There it is. Right there. Right there, some more thyroid. There's your thyroid cartilage that's around there. Let's see it there. The adrenal glands, that's always associated with the kidney. So you look for the kidney model. Where is this going down? Here. There's kidney, and then these adrenal glands here and here. And then I think that's probably the only place you can see it there. Oh, one more place. Let me look. Remember this model right here? Yeah. This yellow thing here, and those are adrenal glands. They're not pointed out there, so I wouldn't ask you there. And then the pancreas, I kind of showed you the pancreas already, and I normally would point out the different parts of it. I think I kind of already did, but just pancreas is fine. But to see the pancreas. This is all pancreas right there. See? Pancreas, pancreas, pancreas. This is the head of the pancreas, the body, and the tail. If you're curious, head, body, tail, just pancreas is fine. Just recognize that. That's it. No. Ovaries and testes, which are, remember, that's reproductive, obviously, but it's also part of the endocrine system. So I point them out in endocrine mode, I guess you could say. Testis right there, ovary right there. I'm sure they label them somewhere. Look right, I think right there they do. Testis, bam, right there. And then look, ovary right there. And that's it. And that's it for this week. So next week, we'll do all this urogenital stuff. And then we'll be done. And that's it for the semester. And so week after next, 2 weeks from today, is your final practical. Let's see, when is that? Click. That's the 28th. Here's today. Here's next week. And then the 28th at 10 o'clock. You will take your final lab practical. And it's, just over those, these pictures. Okay. And of course, it's not comprehensive. There's like 3 handouts that serve as checklists for everything you need to know on all these images. And that's it. You guys have any questions about anything? Anybody? There's how many of y'all in here? I don't know, I missed it. Let's look. 3, 9 of y'all. 8. Good. Okay. Well, I will see you guys next week. Bye. Have a nice week.